Well, hello and welcome to Feedback. You're with Michael Crosby. Now, I'm going to get back with some of these different messages. I've had a lot of email messages and whatnot that have been piling up. It's enormous. We're talking about you measure everything now into the tens of gigs. That's a lot of email. So basically, I had a lot of people getting back. They says, "Weren't you the guy that did all that stuff showed the monkeys and the biological radio experiments, a couple of decades back?" And I says, this is interesting, And yeah, I have to admit that, yes, I did have some stuff out there. I did talk about biological radio. There's a lot of different questions. I'm going to try to cover as many of them as I can. And these are people. I got messages coming all over the place. They're coming from Britain. They're coming from Canada. They're coming from all over the world, basically. Had a lot of them come out of Britain. There was several people. I'm not going to reveal anybody's name on different stuff. And the guy wanted confirmation on confirmation on different stuff. The material that I can talk about to a certain extent, there are limits to what I can talk about. But basically, I'm going to have to start out with, yes, there are cell phone tower problems. And yes, there have been people that have been caught and apprehended and prosecuted for not just spying on people's cell phones, but actually reconfiguring the networks to be able to use it as a weapon, basically, to fry people's brains. And there was a gentleman, a Russian, I believe, he was arrested out of Florida, and he was tried and convicted, and eventually they exchanged him for people from Russia, but I don't know why you would ever even consider letting somebody out of prison that gets caught red-handed. Personally, I don't understand why anybody would ever release a maniac that basically caught red-handed with multiple types of equipment, some of which, again, not just spying on people's cell phones. And this is anybody, even if you're candidates or whatever. This is also reconfiguring information to basically do something. I believe what was disclosed was Savannah syndrome style formats, electronic formats. But, you don't ever let somebody back out into the world ever. That person needed to stay in a box forever because, having somebody where they have a skill set like that, where they can basically say, hey, I'm down on my luck, I will build an entire weapon system for your country. You don't let people back out. They exchange that person again. That never would have happened. If I was president, that just would not have happened under no circumstances. So the violations, basically, if I give you an update, they got really, really big. You got finally, I did a couple shows where I mentioned it. Some of them were over a year ago, I believe. I talked about it and the breach problems and how people can breach. Well, the Chinese and the Russians basically can break through and spy on anybody's cell phones. So the entire network, there's a big series of where it's covered about the Chinese breaking into it and undermining the entire network connection system. This basically means that all the hardware is no more. It's toast, but it's still there. It's sitting there. Congress, last I was looking, I believe Congress was debating an emergency $2 billion to immediately start retrofitting towers with new equipment. Basically, new cards. So there is, of course, a change out that is underway. You're talking about a couple of years, probably. It's really, really hard to deal with this subject area, but I haven't done it for many years. I had some stuff out there. I showed a lot of the experiments. I had the actual medical films involving biological radio experiments on monkeys and other types of animals and whatnot. I had other stuff too that I never disclosed on stuff, because basically, if you name the animal, it was basically experiment on it. It would have been research thoroughly. So sharks and dolphins, just like in Day of the Dolphin. Yeah, all that stuff basically you could say is real, but you've got an ethics level on that stuff, and it's like, no, that's not ethical. And you would respond to people who would be trying to actually put an active system in place that would generally be considered not welcome in the Western world community, and would be addressed. At least if I'm president, it would definitely be addressed. I am working on a piece on the side as I get time, a few minutes available. I work on it for a bit. I'm going to put out a piece on Egyptian electronics, and that's kind of a really interesting subject. A lot of damage to the archive around my life's research on Egyptian use of electricity and electronics. And I'm not sure how you would compare it. I've never compared anybody else's library. I've never found anyone that had a library quite like mine. And I had material from all over the world. I had material from the British museums. I had material from independent scholars and researchers, and I had my own research on material. I did a lot of specialized, my style of forensics. I also had photographs of the Carter, the first photographs of the Carter expedition, in which you actually had artifacts that appeared in the first opening of the first inventory of the tomb, and then that was changed. And there's a controversy over that, but there were photographs, and there were items in the photographs that were not in the second photograph set. Some of the photographs were also removed as well, and somebody came up with the series, those original photographs, and I did have a digital copy of those. So it was quite interesting, because you had one particular device that was a rotative generator, basically. And a lot of people think that particular item ended up in the basement of the West Point, and that the item in particular also was talked about by George Patton, that he had things that he wrote about the experience being confronted with that type of science. And I believe that somebody covered it in a film once. I don't remember the title. I had copies of all of it in the archive, but it was covered by a filmmaker, I believe, I recall. So getting back to some of the questions, would you start? One person says, I thought you said you would start something once. You said that if you ever became a president or governor, that you would start an office to basically have an accounting technologically of this type of technology, and that there would be plenty of disclosures involving what might be found concerning victims. The answer to that is yes. I did put a piece out on that, and definitely yes. If I became president, there would definitely be a special office set up to deal with that. I don't leave people behind. I don't leave victims abandoned. There's no decency in that. the understanding of the people to ask, in other words, this is an extreme weapons technology. It sounds like something out of the Bible where they have these powers to run around and burn people's heads. That's an interesting viewpoint, way to look at that if you're getting into different prophecies and whatnot. That's an extensive area because you had a lot of people that put out material about the theory on it. I believe you had some various, Archimedes had material even on it. But it's interpretive. You have to understand the theory of contextual code extensions. And if the contextual code extension is correct, Archimedes also talked about electricity and basically electronics. Yeah. Archimedes had work where he basically was talking that he believed that ultimately electronics in the future would become very miniaturized and that you would literally have troops in the field that would have these things hooked to their head where they could bring this screen, little square screen right in front of their eye and be able to work with this to do super magnification and other types of operations. In his belief, Archimedes had quite a imagination, I would say, and that again, all of my work in that area in the archive is in question at the moment. It's a very sad thing that type of research would be in the situation that it is, and we'd have so much dereliction of duty of people in government. Addressing some other people's questions. What's wrong with the medical community? Don't they understand about this? Someone mentioned and says, well, they understand, about basically electronic anesthesia. Well, yes, that's correct too. We also had aircraft facilitated to utilize remote electronic anesthesia. We were attempting that as an idea, basically for the Iran hostage rescue mission. That was during the Carter administration, and my research on it indicated that the Russians detected the use of these custom frequencies, and basically international law bans the use of certain types of technology. Technically, it goes all the way back to the League of Nations. The League of Nations, United Nations, you have blanket coverage, brushstroke coverage of certain types of technology. And the use of biological radio as weapons in warfare is banned against other countries. Of course, my reading of that doesn't necessarily say that it's not illegal, that in that particular item that it's not necessarily legal to use inbounds in your own country. Which would mean that technically Ukraine could use the technology within its own boundaries. They couldn't go outside the boundaries, but they could use it inside their own boundaries. From my interpretation of it, that's what I think I see. But I guess you got to consult with a whole bunch of international attorneys on that. A little food for thought information. But the Iran rescue mission. It's kind of a tragedy because it's not exactly a confirmed thing. You're talking about fragments of information and rumors dealing with certain types of what was extremely high-end technology. I believe Ted Koppel did a piece on it once on America Held Hostage. Ted Koppel did a piece on the remote electronic anesthesia, which was kind of interesting, I thought. But, my understanding overall in the operation is that, going to all the way up, when you're going up that high to Tehran, you're almost to the Russian borders. The Russians detected the formats, knew that they were technically an international law violation, technically. And even though these were soft formats, sleep, inducing forced sleep is a soft format. That's not a you're killing them or you're frying their brain out. You're just putting people to sleep. So The rumor is that the Russians had a system. They had counter weapons, and they used a long range specialized crystal laser system that used a different format. And what that format would basically interrupt anything that had radiographic signals. It's a very expensive device. It was my understanding is it was nuclear powered. Basically, I don't want to discuss all the physics how it operates, but basically what would happen is you'd focus at long range, and there would be a spread pattern, but the people on the receiving end could have different things happen. They could feel headaches. They could feel dizzy. They could feel just like they have fog in their head. They may not notice it all, but your instrumentation would probably be going haywire. The different formats would basically be affecting your electronic systems. So, did the crash in the desert happen because of this? Because the electronic systems were basically all jammed and wouldn't work properly, and you're trying to do a night operation. So that's all up in the air, Follow up on that. My understanding, that was an expensive device for the Russians to operate. They canceled, my understanding is they canceled it and they disassembled the technology. And the rumor is that a lot of that technology just kind of floated away, just kind of disappeared. Some archive basement or something, someplace probably. Some of it might have been destroyed, who knows. And so, again, kind of very sad. All the references to this stuff was, again, in the archive. It's very sad. And of course, at some point, I need to reveal that, yes, there is advanced design systems that I worked on, the theoretical systems, advanced electronic systems for certain types of possible types of understanding and countermeasures for those. Which brings me to the next question I'm going to answer. Where people talk about things, they says, well, can you protect your head from cell phone towers burning you up or something, Can you do anything with tinfoil? I don't want to laugh, I'm sorry. But the tinfoil basically is out. What you're talking about is Faraday cages, I'm not going to say that you can't make a Faraday cage with some aluminum foil, but just go research Faraday cages. And the better thing is if you're in a structure or you have a basement or a storm shelter, it doesn't have to be a bomb bunker. You're going to build something. You want to retrofit your building that you're in or one room or whatever. What you want to do is you're thinking Faraday. So it's, you're talking a metal encasing, and then another encasing around that one, and yet again another around that one. So you're going to have three barriers. You have two cavities. In the outer cavity, what you're going to want to do is possibly put a counter signal situation where you're going to jam signals, but you need to control your directional understanding and also control your frequency insulation a little bit. So you're going to have more in there, depending on what you do. If that's the answer you're looking for, the little tinfoil cat, that's not going to help you. In fact, that might work the reverse for some of you. It'll make you a better antenna, Hey, I guess anyhow. But I want to show respect. I don't want to laugh, but I want to be scientifically realistic. For those of you that want to understand certain things about Faraday, real quick, I'll just tell you, people that if you want to protect people from spying on you, everybody around the world has used various systems, including the CIA. They used to basically have a lot of cheats, and what you do is your outer barrier cavity, you're going to do counter signal jamming, basically. And this means so someone can't, do anything. For instance, if you have a window, they used to have these cups you could buy, and they look very similar to a microphone you'd put on a cell phone. It had a sponge cup on it. They used to make those back in the 60s and 70s. And basically, these were generally a bit larger. And what you would do is they're a sponge cup. You stick them on the corners of a window, and then you plug them in, and you put audio activity through, and it's going to basically make a barrier. It's going to make that glass sit there and vibrate, so that if somebody's trying to use a long-range boom mic or a laser mic on the glass, so that they can try to hear the reverberation of what people are talking about inside, you just basically completely jammed all that out. So, that's cheaper to do if you have a business and you want to make sure that people aren't spying on what you're doing, so they don't get an advantage on what you're doing for stock or something. But for those of you that might want a better system, you can just go with a double pane system, and in between the panes, basically you install speakers, so you can just pipe in some music or audio right there, and that can basically go a very long way to dealing with giving you your privacy that you want, and it doesn't necessarily cost that much from a security standpoint. And I've had people say, well, were you up front? Was this true about you saying that people could be at risk that remotely their phone can be detonated? And when our phones get hot, that they're cooking the batteries. Okay, I said that, and I meant every part of that. Currently we now have, I did a pretty good piece on that about a year ago. Another one, I did several, of course, across the last year. And yes, we finally have acknowledgement from the government that, in fact, they have to change out all the cell phone towers because of spying breaches. And it's way more than that. We are at risk of selective attacks at any time. But please keep in mind that go watch, there's a lot of fire videos out there. Go watch the e-bikes and all that stuff on what can happen with some of those things. And understand that, some products are assembled much better, and you're perfectly safe. But the systems involving your cell phone, and when you're connected to a live system and networking, that yes, there's all kinds of things that people can do, but generally it's important to know you're talking about a very small explosion. Generally, your cell phone blowing up in your pocket, there's a lot of instances like that. People had a very bad bruise, some injury, some people had to go to the hospital. But see, overall, that's not the largest explosion. Obviously, that would not be a good day, and I'm not going to tell you that in certain situations that you might not lose, you wouldn't lose fingers, or if you were looking directly at the device, that you wouldn't have damage to your eyes from that occurring. Definitely we're talking about a strategy. I talked about this strategy. We're at extreme risk, and it's good to see that the government is addressing it, and the Congress is looking definitely at the figures of understanding it's billions of dollars to be able to fix this problem. I'm very happy that Congress is addressing some of these issues, because we have to, and myself as I said, as a candidate, that I believe it's proper to give some reasonable disclosure to the public, so that people can keep in mind and have possible options open, and, definitely if things get really tensions from different world situations, that you might want to put under extra precautions. So, that was real. That is real. Welcome to reality. But again, some things are moving forward. So on that, another question, how long have you known about all of this? I'll go ahead and address that. A very long time. Electronics is something that I was very good at, or still very good at, actually. There are just certain things that are just a matter of what you can do. the more elaborate devices are, the more inherently dangerous they could be. You're supposed to think about this when you build your devices and, provide for reasonable safety, and I'm somebody who feels perfectly comfortable using most all devices, and most everybody else does too. I mean, we are talking, about rarities, but yes, we are also talking about percentages, because, somebody asked again, they says, you're saying that terrorists even or a faction could target and detonate 10,000 or 1,000,000 cell phones or more? Yeah, that can happen. So this is something that is important to understand. That's of course not on a nation level. If you have a nation level, you have one nation that could basically blow up or render useless everybody's cell phone in another nation. So yeah, that can happen right through the system. So, dealing with these things, but again, you're talking about a lot of connections, nation to nation. And we are supposed to have certain methodologies to detect the beginning of somebody who's doing a sequence pattern to basically prep and set for trigger detonations on a wide scale. That should show up, but they have happened from time to time. And we recently saw the mass activity in the Mideast. The Israelis were on a use it or lose it. There were statements issued stating that they found that terrorists had obtained the technology and knew of it. Some of their experts knew of it, and that they were in the process of beginning to examine things, and they didn't want any more risks. The time was right, and the concept of saying that use it or lose it. In other words, the technology option was at its optimum level. And it's important to also understand that I believe it's possible that many of the people who intercepted or obtained the technology also were either arrested or targeted, and probably are, most of them I do not believe are living at this point. Do I believe that there is electronics still out there, programs and knowledge in those hands? I'm going to have to say definitely yes. That information is someplace. It's going to be on chips. It's still going to be in existence. But pretty much you have a situation that has some form of equalization, some form of closer stabilization that is reoccurring. We have a lot of activity in Syria. It's a wonderful new chance. It would be very nice if they become a completely open country and say, yes, we want to be an open country. We want to join the Western world. We want to go for the highest technological status, the best type of security options, and the best overall transparency. That's important because there's a lot of things happening. And, as a candidate, if I'm completely honest, there is a reality to understand that countries, in my view, are going to be dumb if they're not going to go for being part of the enlightened world, so to speak. Because in 20 years, we are going to be mining vast amounts of minerals in outer space. And the entire game of the financial system and what backs currency is going to change. We're going to have bars of gold coming from outer space, being deposited on the moon or near the moon. You're going to have huge, huge banks. This is what we're looking at beginning in 20 years for sure. 10 if we're real lucky. 10 if we're real lucky is the beginning. But over the next 100 years, everything changes. People born today, by the time they're looking at doing their retirement, are probably going to be looking at vast amounts of gold being stored in outer space. The entire banking system is going to be different, which means that any smaller country that for some reason decides that they don't want to be part of the technological cutting edge of the rest of the world would be dumb. So, putting it out there like that is brutal, but you need to think about that. You need to think about the future. I'm saying the immediate future, because if you want to be part of it, if you want to be producing some part of the technology or components, you're going to have to, be in transparency, and you're going to have to be on the same fast track, rapid deployment security exchange program that all the other countries are with. You're going to have these agreements. You're going to have to participate. Because right now we have some countries, they don't want to do this. They don't want to participate in things, so they're going to be left behind, because the concept that one country can go out and do all of it by themselves in mass space mining, not likely. When you're talking countries like the United States, yeah, we could do it, but that's going to end up being the whole Western world. And frankly, that's going to end up being China. I just don't see China continuing with some of the stuff that I would consider nonsense coming from some of these other countries. That's a grain of salt. Split the hairs the way you want on that. I think there's going to be a lot more agreements coming around. It makes sense. Iran, well, I don't understand. Iran had a huge opportunity. They were peaking, and they had an opportunity to really change things a lot and continue upward. But instead, they capped themselves off and decided to go backwards. So Iran, with its resources and technology as to what it had achieved, it just decided to withdraw from the space race and space mining. That's dumb. Because the future right now is for countries to realize that there is a future in outer space. We are just now opening up a brand new vast frontier of mineral mining on asteroids. And it's not a joke anymore. This is very real. We know that there are asteroids the size of Texas that are 70% gold. Most of them, not necessarily exciting, but the reality is it's there. It's there. So, continuing, I'm going to go ahead and mention that, by the way, that, basically with Syria, I really would like to see more people urging to give assistance and to help the process move forward. Forensic assistance is desperately needed. The amount of tragedy of the crimes is enormous. The mass graves. This is a tremendous undertaking, and the only way that this is going to resolve itself in a reasonable manner to bring finality is if you bring in a lot of countries with expert understanding of forensics and war crimes and all this kind of stuff. And I believe absolutely every country is willing to assist with that, including Israel. I believe that, actually. And, there's a tremendous opportunity. We've got a huge opportunity to have a country birth itself where people would not be afraid to walk down the street and be harassed, and that they could have free speech, and they wouldn't have to be worried about being murdered or kidnapped. And I think we're there. There's a lot of technology. I talked about SAR satellite technology, and we got new technology coming in. There's, you got quantum aperture stuff that's going to end up coming in pretty soon. Well, maybe. I know a bit about it, but I don't know where the people want to go with it. But we already have technology that's getting old. SARs, that dates back, 40 years. You go back 20 years ago, and you could see a dime and really understand it. Now you can see a blade of grass and see what color it is. You're recorded, whatever can be seen from that angle, maybe 70% of your body, you're recorded in 3D. And that information is recorded and, from the flash, and then you use computers to resort the information. It's computers you need more of to resort that information. It's a lot of work. But again, computers are rapidly moving forward. So you could have a brand new security situation that will completely change the nature of security, of how people look at various types of situations, the nature of peace versus violence is on a table in a way that's never occurred before. And I would just like to see as many people go ahead and grasp the positive as possible. It's in the best interest. Okay, moving forward, let me see. How does all this cell phone tower stuff affect the process of elections? That's a good question. That was really an excellent question. I'm not going to provide your name. It's a good question. The reality here is that we have a situation where government has been for too long not addressing many of the technological threats and reality, and literally have been abandoning people in many ways. In many ways, we've to name some other angles here in understanding. There's basically 10 trillion. That's with a T. $trillion in damage in the United States each year. Similar amount in Europe from cyber attacks. These are your phones being jammed, your computers being jammed, the web doesn't work, your phone doesn't work, and you're losing your time, and you're the victim. For businesses, larger businesses, this is all tax deductible. They just hire extra people, they do extra research, which, by the way, extra harvested research actually benefits their business. But everything becomes tax deductible, which means they don't pay for it. The average citizen, you're stuck. You get a loss and you have no compensative factor. I talked about solutions, about how to deal with that, special appware to fix that. I would do that as president. I'd implement that stuff immediately. But as far as the question on how it's going to deal with elections, what's it been doing with elections? We don't have a mass modeling technical situation at the level that we need. It's nowhere near close. The investment at this point in time to do this, you're talking about tens of billions of dollars to deal with being able to get enough mass modeling going to be able to really understand it. So you can have people selected on list and be blacklisted. You don't vote for our guy, we're gonna constantly keep hitting you. We're gonna put you on the victim list and keep victimizing you. So at this point, I went public with the ownership of identification with a lot of the cyber attack systems. 70% of the systems are owned by people who identify themselves as Republicans, even though 9 out of 10 Republicans have no idea that this is going on. Let me repeat that. 9 out of 10 Republicans have no idea that this is even going on. So the vast numbers versus the equipment that was purchased and installed that's capable of doing the cyber attack deals with an oligarchic style situation. So interfering in the process of elections, it's already happened. It's been happening. The question of whether the United States and certain other countries, whether they're ever going to be able to have a free election again, that's all in doubt at this point. That's all in doubt. Think about the next upcoming election beyond this election. Think about 4 years from now, when all of a sudden people might have a situation when they say, hey, man, somebody's using cell phone towers to burn my brain. Maybe they're only doing that because you're a Democrat or because you're a Republican. So the anti-incumbent strategy is generally a given logical tactic. So up front, I make it clear, as a candidate, as president, I would definitely address all these items immediately and on a significant scale. Continuing, basically we have a system where your business comes under attack and you end up going out of business. Or you have so many disruptions constantly against your business, you can't operate. So someone says, we've got a solution for you, but you have to vote for our buddy. Would you even have to say that? It's really simple. Can people just logically figure it out? We're talking about RICO and Code Talk and the way things work, and people just will figure it out by themselves. They'll understand. These type of threats are just unacceptable. And the countermeasure systems that we have are, again, unacceptable. The vastness of the system you would have to build, you not only have to have a massive system for military and a massive system for intelligence, you have to have a massive system for the Justice Department, you have to have a massive system for Homeland Security. You have to have a diversified series of different departments that have exactly the same equipment, basically, to be able to provide security understanding and come to decisions and move forward to do what needs to be done. And this way you have a balance so that you don't have basically a governmental department decide to take over the government. So when I was proposing mass economic modeling software back in 2005 to 8 as a startup, saying we need to spend $4 to $6 billion a year for mass economic modeling, those systems also encompassed the ability to understand lots of different areas. The best way I could give you an understanding on the quick is, if you're not a gamer, go talk to some gamers and say, I want you to show me a game called Yuri's Revenge. It's a Command and Conquer add-on module, and there are segments. You can research it on the web to get a better idea of what I'm talking about and what the situations can be. Because here we have an area like, for instance, the design systems that I've been working on for decades to develop and to get going with the mass modeling systems is things that have both a gaming aspect as well as real life aspects. So we're talking about looking at mass economics, not just in your game as a real-time strategy option that has your window into first-person shooter. We're also talking about a very realistic understanding to the symmetry respective to economics. This means that this is a very powerful tool. You can learn at the same time and understand things about finances and economy and stocks and crypto, and all these things, are encompassed in this understanding. So it's a very powerful tool that you can actually utilize for business. It also encompasses cyber attacks and the way to understand a lot of different avenues of what to do. It has the extreme real life actual application extensionals where you're talking about something that's beyond a game. You're now using similar information and you're going into a more extended situation of mass modeling to deal with the security situations involving real life. So you have a lot of extensions, you've got a lot of understanding of what the actual equipment is. We're talking very real life, very realistic, and practical applications basically infused into the understanding. Very powerful. This is also a very full-rounded system. So in other words, medical technology and medical electronics is also incorporated at the most extreme levels, which means the symmetry of accuracy in gaming is available. But the real-life application for extensional understanding also is very real, to understand a completely different avenue of incorporating the various understanding. So you can be able to mass model and tactical table an understanding of where things are and where things are at. Various types of modes. This works for so many applications, it's mind-boggling. And it helps to understand running scenarios, again, that could be mind-boggling to many people. Very intensive. So we're also talking about things like exploratory medical science. So if you have people that want to understand medical science, medical electronics, you're going to be able to have extensive knowledge access right through just the game alone. You know, if you're going to go into the real-time industrial level mass modeling stuff, you're talking about very intensive electronic capabilities, very powerful. So we're talking about a lot of different things like accelerated healing, basically healing amplifiers, ways to help your body boost its bioelectronic capabilities and proper balance and heal much faster. Ways to control various things and understand how to do bridging and all kinds of different stuff. You know, as we've had people in the past that have had these projects, I had 5 really interesting projects involving parties who basically had people that had damaged spines and had made bodysuits, where they picked up with the signal system to basically give people a way to redirect their brain to give them the ability to walk around and do things again. Very interesting research that has occurred over more than 30 years, actually, more than 35. But now, you know, technology's moved rapidly forward, and, you know, with computers, it's just totally exploded this understanding. You know, mathematically, this system extremely powerful. So we're talking about a major explosion in the number of lines of communication and lines of code that translate out into a very impressive and accurate rendition with the tactical table situation, with the visualizations. So this is something that, you know, again, in area after area after area, no matter whether you're designing something and doing a CAD design, you're now tapping into the ability to have assistive CAD design software associated right in your gaming platform. But it also has a real-life extension. You're talking about the advanced versions for industrial level purposes. So this is something where the game becomes an ultimate learning device, and it's upgradable right on into going into the industrial capabilities. Now, there's just so many areas where this all goes, and some of this deals with, like, we started with some of the items dealing with the cell phone towers and microwave attacks, reconstructing formats that would be able to do radiographic injuries on people. This, again, is a mass modeling situation to understand what's going on, and this will help out in everything from responding to detection to just giving a better overall understanding of what's going on. So researching these cogs and understanding how all these are going to fit together and work with the newest chips, as this has been something that I've been working on for decades, because the mass economic modeling of everything that is real in life, at least real to you, real to me, even real from a spirituality standpoint, is something that is part of our fabric of ourselves. And this is what's incorporated into the mass modeling sequences. So if you want to look and say, let's compare China and India and understand what they're bringing online, the system can basically come up with different staged transitions of what's going on. You can focus on different areas more intensely. You have other different areas you're just going to be working with raw statistics, and there's going to be raw estimates, so the game will move faster. But the extension levels are prepared to be able to go far beyond that for a more exact situation. But now you're talking industrial level applications. So people will be able to play the game, have enjoyment, and learn things at the same time, because the cogs that are utilized are all based on realism, realistic, exact, accurate information. So you're not just going to be gaming and running your own little scenarios, and you could be using it, writing yourself, scripting out for a film, a fantasy adventure, whatever it is. This is encompassed in the understanding of the multi-worldism of the Crypti World setup. So if you're talking about a standpoint of, well, how's this going to work with our kids? It's very informative. Everything that your kids are going to be handling in their hands and seeing with their eyes is going to be renditions of real life application stuff for the most part. Now, fantasy world type stuff this is a writing, this is a creative challenge area for people to explore entertainment at a level that is superior. So if you want to enjoy a space pirate adventure of an advanced civilization that basically has had pirates become turned into basically commerce guilds, you can do that. And the devices are very realistic. And as you can journey to different worlds, you can have the interaction where people of more primitive societies see something technological and they immediately perceive it as a piece of magic. And of course, the realism of the game adventure preserves the free mind's activity to explore art and everything that is the human experience. So you're going to have the continuation of whatever you want to do with your hair, you can do. Whatever clothes you want to wear, you can wear. So you're going to have this very interactive and colorful understanding of characterism and the ability to change your characters to keep the flavor and genres where you want them to be. And again, that's a multi-world system. So if you want to interact with other types of worlds, the idea is to have some uni-change capabilities for doorways. As we've had with gaming technology and gaming engines, they're beginning to blend crossover technology so gaming engines can work with other gaming materials. So this is all going to be resolved shortly, and I do mean shortly. So you're going to have now games where people are going to be able to interact and go into a window where they can now play somebody else's game, but they're coming through a Crypti World portal. So this also adds the feature where you can have add-on mods to other people's games where there's a portal for them to step over into Crypti World. So, this is very encompassing for these different types of genres. So if you're going to have a lot of, say, some people like the cyberpunk realities is also part of Crypti World. So there's going to be this rather large array of creations of various types of cyberpunk worlds. The ability to create vast worlds with supercomputers now is going to becoming something almost like child's play. So these are the cogs and the building and the systems that I've been researching to be able to get these things together at a new vast level. And a lot of it's just been held back by waiting for the advanced chips to arrive. I couldn't get people to invest in chips I wanted to build, so waiting for them to arrive is another aspect. Now, although there are designs for supercomputer systems and chips that I'm going to be trying to move forward with, the IOE systems and some of these other spherical computing concepts, primarily these things will progress at different levels depending upon how people feel about funding the projects and how people feel about getting involved in the projects and how many people are interested in the product of the end result. So the technology level literally in the game will have everything from A to Z, So if you want to go to a primitive world where people are using cell phone towers to zap each other's brains out, you might want to take one of these neat little devices that can track where this stuff is coming from and figure out how to play the game and get involved in the criminal investigative facets of understanding this technology, because the mathematical symmetries on all of this stuff are very real. Okay, if I'm going to close out here addressing some people that had the questions, when are the coins opening? When are the cryptos, the NFTs? When is this finally going to open up? Everything still keeps we're in that quasi area where there's all these different problems because 3 times we've had areas where we wanted to go with mechanisms, and all of a sudden it looked like the government might be shutting certain people down. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, we can't do that. So we're still trying to look at it. We could technically be releasing certain NFTs and items at any time. So it's kind of wide open. I can't commit. We're actually past what we thought was our original committed opening date for these various areas. There's been a lot of diversions for various reasons. We're still trying to recover items that basically were in the archive, and we're not getting government cooperation. We have, politics has been a very problematic situation because the logic of some people and situations is just more than a mystery. It's something that's unacceptable, but we're trying to move everything forward as much as we can. So I'm going to thank everybody for their time, and I hope I've covered the various aspects of interest within the shell of the scope of multi-interest areas that touch upon different entityism for what we've conveyed in this segment. Thank you for your time. Again, Michael Crosby.